All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are all welcome again to this Legal Surgeries. On behalf of Time to Heal and the organization, the management, and everyone in the organization, we want to say thank you all for coming to this surgeries this afternoon. Thank you very much. We thank especially all our legal support members who have been very tremendous in making sure that this I want to thank Holly. I want to thank Karina. I want to thank Zoe. I want to thank Zara. I want to thank Tin. And I want to thank you, Kieran, who is going to be our presenter today. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. And again, special thanks to everyone who has been attending so far. We are very grateful. And everyone who will be watching afterwards. And this is the 5th week of this legal surgeries. And we'll be looking at a very special part of it today, which is reporting and proving domestic abuse, what the law expects, the expectations of the law. So without wasting much of our time, we want to hand over straight to Kieran Wood, who is our guest presenter today, to take us through this. Feel free to type your questions on the chat. And if you also have questions, we will most likely come back to questions at the end of the presentations. Comments, questions will be received. So whilst the presentation is going on, I would encourage us to mute our microphones for recording purposes. And if you have any privacy concerns, let us know and we will be able to address them. So having said that, thank you very much for coming, and we will go straight to a presentation. Kieran, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Kieran, and I am a trainee solicitor in a big full-service law firm based in Scotland. And today, as part of the weekly legal surgeries by Time to Heal, I'm going to be presenting on the topic of reporting and proving domestic abuse and the expectations of the law in this regard. Before I kind of kick off, I think it's maybe useful for me to mention that I am only at trainee level. So a lot of this research that I put into this presentation is new to me as well. I'll do my best to answer any questions you have, but I'd ask you just to kind of hold off to the very end. And if there's anything I'm not sure about, anyone else can feel free to kind of chip in if possible. Can everyone hear me okay before I start? Oh, yeah. Good, perfect. Okay, so I've kind of split the presentation in half. I've firstly kind of want to talk about how you go about reporting domestic abuse if you or someone you know is a victim, the kind of stages or steps you can take in that regard. And then the second half of the presentation, I've talked a little bit more about the kind of difficulties in proving domestic abuse and the types of things that you can do if you're a victim or if you're a prosecutor or police on a case involving domestic abuse. So firstly, in terms of reporting domestic abuse, I thought it was useful, just before we touch on the kind of legal methods and getting in touch with authorities and stuff like that, I thought it was useful just to list or make you aware that there are so many organisations out there. I had no idea just how many there are, but there are hundreds of organisations almost in the UK alone who are dedicated to providing assistance if you or someone you know is a victim of domestic abuse. And really usefully, actually, around this time with coronavirus, the UK government has provided specific guidance in all matters to do with domestic abuse on one of their coronavirus guidance pages. I provided the link for that on this slide, but within this link you'll see a whole host of organisations listed, their contact details, everything. And these organisations are tailored advice for wide range of communities or backgrounds. There's Latin American specific domestic abuse advice. There's African domestic abuse. All different kinds of domestic abuse questions can be answered by any of these organisations. So that's a useful first place to start, I would say, before if your situation is just you have some questions and you're unsure of certain things. Of course, that's not always going to be the case. Apologies in advance, this is all quite self-explanatory, but of course, if you're in more urgent assistance or your situation's a little bit more serious, always contact the police or the UK authorities on 999. If you can't speak on the phone, it's useful to know that you can communicate with the operator by coughing or tapping a handset. If you're on a mobile, there's also a make yourself heard service, which I wasn't aware of, by pressing 55 on any mobile handset. That lets the operator know that you can't speak. On top of that, yeah, you can register for an emergency text message service, which basically means the next time you're in danger, you can text this number, this service, and you should be able to get help when you're not able to speak on the phone, basically. If you text register capital letters to 999, you'll then get a text which will walk you through that process. On top of this, I also came across something known as the right to ask for domestic abuse matters. It's something I wasn't aware of again, but it is under the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, something also referred to as Clare's Law. That means you can ask for the police to check whether a new, former, or existing partner has a violent past. If records show that you may be at risk from domestic abuse from a partner, police can disclose this information to you. Worth bearing in mind, however, that there is a criteria to be met before the police will disclose any information, and that is that any disclosure made needs to be legal, proportionate, and necessary to do so. Right to ask, yeah, also applies for third parties. So if you have a friend or family member who you think may be at risk, you can apply for disclosure on their behalf, subject obviously to the same strict criteria of it being lawful, necessary, and proportionate to do so. Yeah, this slide here just really walks you through how to go about applying for the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme and specific advice. If you're not wanting to go into the police station, there's other ways around it. You can phone 101, find out about the process, or speak to a member of the police on the street. There's also specific forms you would need to fill in before any domestic violence disclosure scheme is made. And I've applied the link to that form just on this slide here. So I know this has already been mentioned in the previous weekly surgery. However, I just thought it was useful to know that once reporting, there is court orders available that can immediately protect you from abuse from your partner, known as non-molestation or occupation orders, and these can be made on a emergency basis as well. Yeah, and if anyone who breaches those injunctions, any perpetrator breaks those rules, then they would be subject to arrest and other punishment as well by law. So in terms of reporting domestic abuse for non-UK citizens, it's quite useful to flag that if you're in a relationship with someone who's a British citizen, but you yourself are not, there is help out there as well. You can apply for what's known as the Destitution Domestic Violence Concession, which provides help if you are in the UK on a temporary basis. This can basically offer you 3 months leave, it can provide you accommodation, it can give you access to benefits, and other useful help is out there as well. So despite not being a UK citizen, you should never feel like you can't report domestic abuse. Now the more tricky matter, I would say, this is the second part of the presentation where we'll talk about proving domestic abuse and the expectations of the law around this. I've used the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act for my research for this, but I've also taken some guidance from the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, which is based in England and Wales. However, I'm sure the kind of same guidance will apply in a very similar manner up here in Scotland as well. But in terms of the expectations of the law with domestic abuse, the specific offence was created in the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act for abusive behaviour towards a partner or ex-partner. Quite unique and which was quite new. This covered psychological abuse, emotional abuse, coercive and controlling behaviour, as well as your usual physical domestic abuse. The difficulties, obviously, in proving domestic abuse are the fact that it usually takes place behind closed doors or out with public eye, which kind of differentiates it from any kind of common assault or breach of the peace offence, where there usually is eyewitnesses, cameras present, which can capture any footage. Domestic abuse obviously takes place behind doors, which can make quite difficult to gather evidence for prosecution. On top of this, due to the nature of domestic abuse and victims being suffering quite a lot and losing a bit of confidence, they can be very hesitant towards giving evidence following a domestic abuse report due to fear the general repercussions of doing so. So with all this in mind, the Crown Prosecution Service has delivered kind of tailored advice for prosecutors and I guess police as well on the type of evidence that may be brought forward out with victims' participation, if they're hesitant to do so. This could include 999 tapes, statements from third-party witnesses, neighbours, family members, colleagues, peers, teachers, other organisations, psychiatrists they may be speaking to, CCTV footage, and then of course, when any report is made of domestic abuse, the police would examine thoroughly the kind of scene where that abuse had taken place to really observe who the perpetrator and things like that. Things like furniture overturned, any damage that's taken place in a house would all, of course, be admissible evidence. Also in 2015, the case of Barnaby versus DPP ruled that 999 calls and complainants' accounts are admissible in a domestic violence case as well. So this slide really just kind of recaps on what we've mentioned previously, that you can request domestic abuse as a victim or prosecutor from any of these organisations. I don't think this is an exhaustive list as well. It may include other people as well, but this is just kind of general overview. But you could request evidence from courts, the police, multi-agency risk assessment conferences, social services, health professionals, banks, employers, university, school, all different kinds of organisations you could request evidence from. Another thing that I found which was quite useful as well is that the prosecutors have a domestic abuse aid memoir or joint evidence checklist, which kind of lists out all the different evidence that is useful to be gathered in a domestic abuse case. It's not exhaustive, however, and it is possible to bring forward evidence that isn't listed within this aid memoir or evidence checklist. So other things which aren't mentioned can be brought forward, such as online sites, social networking spaces, any kind of social media accounts, support organisations, health services, records, etc. Another difficulty with proving domestic abuse comes when there's counter allegations made by an alleged perpetrator. This obviously makes things more complicated, and in this scenario the police would need to really immediately and quite comprehensively examine any scene of a crime to attempt to establish who is in fact the primary aggressor and any primary victim. It can also, it's really important as well to examine the scene to find out who, if any self-defense was a reasonable level of self-defense, if they had to protect someone such as a child, for example. The police would do this by exploring the relationship between individuals, context of any offending, any previous call-out records, or if there's any divorce proceedings or annulment or anything like that going on, then that would obviously be relevant as well as evidence. This again just kind of really recaps on what we mentioned previously of what the police officers should do if there is a counter allegation made. Provides just quite a comprehensive list. I won't go through it all due to time. Yeah, this is quite helpful as well. It's basically mentioned within the CPS guidelines that there can be no unfair stereotypes in domestic abuse cases. There is no perfect victim. There's no perfect perpetrator, and it doesn't matter about any kind of ethnicity, background, sexual orientation. If there's a man or woman involved, a prosecutor shouldn't have any preconceptions of who they think is generally a perpetrator and who they think is a victim, because that varies massively from case to case. So it's just useful to have that overriding mission within the guidelines, I thought. And that's really it. Apologies if it was quite short. I'm just learning a lot of this myself, and I found it was really useful just to go through it, split it in half between reporting, the process involved in reporting domestic abuse and proving domestic abuse. But I hope it was helpful in some way. It was very much a kind of overview. Thanks for the thumbs up. But if you have any questions or comments now, I'll do my best to answer them. And if not, if I'm not able to, I'll go away and find out the answer and come back to you. Or if someone else on the call who's a bit more experienced than myself has the answer, then feel free to answer that for me. But if anyone has any questions or comments at this time, I'd invite you to feel free to ask. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Kieran, for such a wonderful presentation. I don't know about others, but I know that I've learned a lot from this already. And it's quite intriguing to see that the law has a lot of provisions for domestic abuse victims and survivors. And the law seeks to protect us, protect everyone from this ugly incidents. Thank you so much. I'm particularly intrigued. You mentioned one particular right, the right to ask. You mentioned the right to ask, which is the right of anyone who wants to go perhaps into relationship or into marriage to seek for information, ask the police to see, and conduct background checks into anyone's life. I think that is really, really very important, and I really like that point so much. I'm just reading, I'm just seeing on the point from Zoe. Zoe has a message on the chat. When pressing 55, do you need to be on the line to someone or just dial 55?
Sorry, I missed that question there. You kind of broke up a little, but I'll go in the chat and see what the question says.
Yes.
Or are you able to repeat that for me, Lawson? I lost your connection a wee bit.
Okay, so the has a question that when pressing 55, do you need to be on the line to someone or just dial the number 55? Did you get that?
Pressing 55. Oh, yeah, you need to, that's once you've called 999, sorry. Good question, I should have probably put that in there. So it's once you've called 99 on a mobile, if you're not able to speak, press 55, and that will allow you to make yourself heard. And I think that basically, I don't think it allows the police to track your information, but I think it lets them know that you're in an emergency situation. Okay. I think with landlines, the police are able to track your actual location as well, if you're unable to speak. But yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, I should have probably flagged that. But yeah, press 55 is to do with a mobile once you called 999. Okay.
Thank you for that answer, and thank you, Zoe, for such a crucial question. I was meaning to ask, please, let's keep our questions coming. Indicate on the button that you have a question, then I will call you. The right to ask, when going to the police to request for their services or assistance, do you have to pay as a victim, or is it free?
Honestly, I'm not sure, but I don't think you have to pay for that service. I'll have a look. I will find out for you. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I maybe vaguely remember something to do with that, but let's see. No, to the best of my knowledge, no, you don't have to pay, but I will go and have a look before I confirm that. Maybe that's something we can confirm after the call. Okay. I'm not terribly sure off the top of my head, sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. I think it's good enough to know that we have the right to ask and get information about the background of anyone we are about to engage into relationship with, anyone at all. So I think it's very crucial. It's a very vital point. because most times if we conducted good investigation, one would have been able to know whether a partner has a tendency of being abusive. So I think it's very important that we remember that. And also, if I could just pick up also on the court order. They said the court could order and make an order of non-molestation. At what point could this order be made? Is it when the victim or survivor has made an application to court? What are the processes of securing this order? That's the question.
Yeah, so I think it can be made once the application is made to court, but I think there also is emergency orders that can be made in like specifically urgent scenarios. I'm not sure of the ins and outs of this, but yeah, there is emergency orders as well if like basically the situation is really grave. I don't think you need to wait to go through the entire court process. You can get a kind of interim order between like the immediate situation and having gone through the court process. I'm fairly certain of that as well.
Thank you for that so very much. Does anyone have questions? Any comments or feedback to chip in?
I want to say thank you for the presentation, and
no problem.
I was particularly also excited to know more or hear it re-emphasized that even if you are a non-citizen, you have some provision for you. There is no any reason to keep quiet. At least that there is some. This is particularly very useful for our work, especially because we are dealing with the minority ethnic groups, and some of them, or a good number of them too, they are usually threatened by their partners, those of them who do not have an immigration status. They use it to abuse them. But it is good to know that they can report something, and there is at least some little amount of provision for them that will allow them to organize their lives. Thank you very much again for your time, and everyone on the platform. I know that these presentations take a lot of time to prepare. We do not take it for granted at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, that is a really useful provision to have. And yeah, of course, if someone from an ethnic minority background needs to come forward, they do have help out there. It's the various help they have, but they can have 3 months of leave, can get benefits, they can find temporary accommodation and things like that as well. So they should never feel like they shouldn't be able to come forward. You're quite right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very good because we've been covering different aspects of it every week. So this was even more beneficial. I still would like to know, Tesco's has put in that you can get help. Is anyone that has gone to the actual shop, do they actually get help? I know you can ring a domestic abuse line, but they also say that you can go in a shop and ask for help. Like you said, go to a policeman on the street and tell them. Does anybody know if going in a shop, if this has worked, if somebody's shopping and they say, like, I'd just like to tell you that I need help with domestic abuse. Can anyone tell me if this actually works, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but Lawson, you might have come across someone who has tried this and might have had an experience. I'm not sure.
I think it's worth looking into. I haven't got any personal examples right now, but definitely it's something I'm going to pick up now and investigate to get more facts and stories, if anyone has really taken advantage of it, and if in fact they have been helped. So hopefully before next week surgery, I should come back with a response to that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's very important. We have to make sure that every support mechanism that have been put in place, that they are actually working, and people are taking advantage of it. So it's not just one thing to have support and then you tick the box that, oh, we have done this, we have put this in place. But in actual fact, that people are not taking advantage of it, or it's not really working. So we will investigate that and see what comes out of it. I think it's very important just to re-emphasize what Reverend Abiola mentioned. Thank you. About the fact that it is very intriguing and very good to see that the law covers a broad range of people, notwithstanding your background, notwithstanding your ethnicity. Particularly, you mentioned, Kieran, that there is a law on unfair stereotypes. That is very good to see, that the law doesn't take into cognizance your background. So there is no perfect victim, there is no perfect perpetrator. Ethnicity is not a factor in the whole thing. So I think the message is basically to anyone who's watching this afterwards, there is help for you, there is help for everyone, notwithstanding where you come from. If you have the need to report or to seek help on domestic abuse, please feel free to speak up, get in touch with the police, get in touch with us at Time to Heal and other charities. We'll be very, very happy to render our help and support. So, any further questions?
Just to add to this, firstly, lovely presentation. Thanks, because it covers up a lot of information after we've had so many presentations. Like, just to add to this and also to Camila's question, actually, I just came across this morning on Aberdeen City Council on Facebook. They have posted something regarding domestic abuse, and they've given a lot of information of what abuse is, who should contact, all the services. I can send you a link, actually. I have that. I'll share that on the page. And it also covers up where it says, like, not only for the victims, but also for people who have seen someone in a situation, what they should do as well. So say, for example, like Camila asked a question like, oh, do people take advantage of if a victim comes to someone to talk about a problem? So, you know, if you kind of go through the information of how exactly other person who's not a victim can handle, what should they do to help victims as well. So it gives a bit of information on a lot of things. I found it very helpful, actually. It is a very short thing to read, but it gives like all the contact details and whom they can call, and it just kind of gives a lot of information. So I will definitely share this just after the presentation. But yeah, they are doing quite a lot of things on Facebook. I think it's a wonderful medium where it's a sponsored thing. So even if you're not, I think on it just comes up on your page as well. So it is kind of sharing information about that as well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karuna, for that. That's very useful. And as soon as we get the link, we will make sure we share it with everyone so that we can also circulate it to those who need it and to everyone that you know. Thank you for that. For any further comments, questions, or feedback? Whilst we are waiting, just to re-echo the fact that, because today's presentation is on reporting and the evidence, what the law expects. I think it's quite re-emphasizing from the presenter's point of view, the fact that the set of evidence that will be required or that you should take note of. Kieran has highlighted them, that CCTV recordings could be requested, if I'm right. It's time to be corrected. CCTV recordings, third-party witnesses, tapes. You can also use your call as evidence of domestic abuse if you have evidence on it. He mentioned the case of Anabi and TPP. I hope I got that right, where the court held that 999 calls are admissible in evidence. So I think it's crucial that we bear those in mind, that we keep records, we keep these records, keep them. None of these things are trivial, so just keep them in case we don't pray for it, but just keep records, and then you get help when it requires. Because one of the challenges, from my little experience, one of the challenges going to court is that if you don't have evidence to prove your allegation, it becomes more difficult for the courts to step in. Of course, the court can come in their equitable jurisdiction, but in law, if there are no evidence to prove that a certain act has been committed, it is very difficult for the prosecution to make a very solid case. So in order to avoid that, let's keep records. CCTV records can be requested, third-party witnesses, tapes, pause, and anything we think is crucial, we should just maintain them and not throw them away. Thankfully, we are in the age of technology and information. This thing can be preserved so well. You can upload them to your Google Drive. You can upload them on your iCloud and preserve them. Just make sure that you don't doctor evidence. So that's very crucial to mention. Any feedback or comments?
No, no further comments. Lawson, I'll circulate this PowerPoint with you. I've made a few changes since I last sent it over, so I'll send it over to you after this, and then you can get it sent around to everyone.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks very much everyone for listening. Hope it answered some questions, I guess.
Thank you so very much, Kieran, for this presentation, and we look forward to your presentations. We are hopefully looking forward on how we'll make some plans on how to update these presentations, link them up to our website. Like we mentioned earlier on, they will be uploaded on our YouTube channels. Please let's go over and listen to them over again, and share them with people, share them with your friends on your Facebook link, subscribe to the YouTube channels, and yeah, let's just refresh our minds from time to time, and spread the news that there is help. The message is that there is help for every domestic abuse victim. There is help, and there will always be help. We continue to fight this ugly menace until the society is completely free of domestic abuse and violence. If there are no further comments or questions, I will hand over to Reverend Abiola Crown if she has some few closing remarks for us for today.
No remarks, you are our host here. You are only for you to give us coffee, and you won't give us.
We are aiming, now that the lockdown has been lifted gradually, we are aiming that we one day have opportunity of perhaps meeting physically, and then during the surgeries we'll have time to go for coffee break and have some tea and then come back. So we're looking forward to having a very substantive time with this. God will help us. Yes.
Yeah, we pray that one will happen sometime, but I don't think not this year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And hope to see us next weekend on Saturday.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
What's the subject next week on Saturday? What's week 6? What's the subject, please?
We haven't released that yet, so I'm aiming to release it on Monday. We aim to release it on Monday, and then, so yes, pardon me that I haven't got that ready today.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. Thank you. Thanks, Kieran,
No problem.
as well.
Thanks very much. Bye,
Bye.
guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Zoe.
Bye.
Bye.